What's a scam so good that people don't even realize they're falling for it? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. U.S. dental insurance often has a yearly maximum benefit of less than $1,500. It makes health insurance look like a benevolent institution. Yes, the two are separate because teeth are not part of your health apparently. Story 2. Social media. The social pales in comparison to the media part. It's all advertising being pumped right into your brain. Story 3. Paying for multiple streaming services. Paying extra to gain access to content on those services you're already paying for. Paying even more to buy specific movies or TV shows, no actual tangible ownership. Story 4. Credit card processing fee. These companies are taking 3.5% of every transaction. It's $160 billion per year. And that's not including another $120 billion in interest and fees direct to the consumer. The EU had set the processing fee at 0.3%. In modern times with computers and the internet, it doesn't cost the processors that much to maintain the networks. It's a price setting with just 4 processors: Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and Discover. It's a huge wealth transfer with no real competition. Story 5. Americans' sneaky way of naming things for everything. Most of the time, what people think is describing a product is actually not the case, and it's part of the complete name. My local Honda dealer included with each service something called World-Class Inspection Service, something even the salespeople will hype. It's not a service that is world-class. The entire name of the goddamn service is World-Class Inspection. And if you ask them who was the authorizing entity that decided on this service to be called world-class, they will fumble. If you ask them what makes this world-class, it's nothing new and offered by every damn mechanic. Some will say their technicians are specialized in Honda, but what the would you expect at a Honda dealership? A lot of the things, if you start looking at like this, you will realize this is just marketing, and worse, people are falling for it. The terms that are regulated companies have sneaky ways around it. Chocolatey milk instead of chocolate milk. Frozen desert instead of ice cream. Story 6. Modern conservatism was created by a coalition led by Ronald Reagan and Pat Roberts to convince the working class to vote against their interests in order to transfer wealth to the wealthiest ruling class. It's all a lie, and we are at the logical endpoint. Story 7. Expensive vodka. Vodka is vodka is vodka is vodka. It's distilled nothingness. I really don't think pouring it over a crystal you found in a ditch on the moon can change distilled potato juice into anything other than distilled potato juice. Story 8. Life. We're thrust into this world, forced to work for things that in the grand scheme of the universe hold no real value. We spend most of our lives just trying to survive, only to catch brief, fleeting moments where we actually feel alive. It's a cruel trade-off, sacrificing time for mere glimpses of life's true beauty. Story 9. Well, can't think of any bigger scam than the one Agent Orange pulled off, duping half the USA into thinking he's some patriot with a vision, and not the loathsome grifter and self-serving sociopath that he clearly is. Story 10. The stock market, nothing but a huge legal Ponzi scheme. All the prices based off of potential future earnings, not actual profits. It's how Elon has made so much while he's really run pretty poorly run companies. They really haven't made much, if any, profit. It's a huge, huge house of cards. Story 11. American health insurance. If I was in excruciating pain needing a surgery or something and insurance denied it for BS reasons, I'm pretty sure I'd roundhouse kick every one of them in the throat. Story 12. Buying new clothes is a first resort. I'm a victim of this scam myself. Always thought secondhand stores were crap, even though I hadn't been in one since almost a decade. Recently went into one, bought a new blouse and a lamp. Whole trip including bag only cost £8. Story 13. Capitalism. Capitalism is the idea that capital is invested to get back more. Loans are made so that the loan provider gets the principal and interest back. Businesses are started with the expectation that the business will make more than the investment. Stocks are bought with the expectation that they will be sold back for more. Employees are hired with the expectation that the employee will earn more for the company than the wage the company pays them. The scam is that the more comes from working people and the environment. Capitalism is the source of our immiseration and the destruction of the environment we depend on for our survival. Story 14. Another scam are insurances. Health insurance. You pay more each year, or the company pays for you, and you benefit less and less from it to the point you'll be paying just to cover an aspirin. House insurance? They'll find any excuses to not cover you by any means. I find it absurd to have a law in my country making mandatory to everyone to have an insurance for their houses against earthquakes or flooding, and yet these insurances will never cover in case of a mass disaster because of natural cause. Car insurance? That are the only that goes up the most in price due to high statistics of car accidents. Why should I pay more because other people are idiots and don't deserve to have car license while I never had an accident myself in 13 years? But when it hit my rear car, the insurance tried to scam me by trying to send me to the cheapest mechanic to repair, which have a terrible reputation based on reviews, and also trying to give me non-ohm parts. A story 15. America. The concept of who America believes they actually are. And I say this as an American. The great lie that many of us have been told is that we are the great, and the others fell for propaganda, when we literally are the product of good propaganda. Story 16 nowadays is pension system. The whole pension is just a Ponzi scheme where it needs always of young workforce to contribute for pension so retired people benefits. This works when there are more young people than old people. However, the moment it is reversed, more retired people and less young people in the workforce, it's a big problem. Governments tries workarounds such as increasing the age when you can retire and hope you die before you enjoy that pension, increase taxes, import lots of people and hope they work and contribute for the pension, while upsetting natives as many of these people are incompatible culturally. In conclusion, one at 30 years old today that contribute to pension will not benefit from it 30 years from now due to that, as the age of retirement keeps increasing and having the excuse of life expectancy have increased, so you have to work more. But who will hire you after 50, 60, and you can't retire? If you're becoming frail, you're double F asterisk seeked. It will collapse. Story 17. Digital purchases of non-physical items. That's skins, microtransactions, no ads on media, subscriptions, battle passes, cryptocurrencies, assuming Taco Bell is Mexican food. Story 18. If it's that good, it won't be detected. In other words, insurance fraud. Private or public, long as lies are billed correctly and look like everybody else's real billings, a careful crook who doesn't get greedy won't even be detected, let alone caught. Story 19. Tipping culture in the U.S. Corporations have successfully brainwashed the population into thinking that paying retail workers' wage is customers' job. Employees and customers fight tooth and nail with each other over the amount of tips, making it even a political issue at times, all the while saving dollars for corporations. Pretty good scam. Story 20. Social media. Most social media sites have just become a conglomerate of advertising, data mining, cyberbullying, Photoshop photos, and people competing about who has a better life. I think most people with social media just don't realize how much better their life would improve if they just delete Facebook, Instagram, X, etc. Story 21. Every property on Airbnb is advertised as half the price before cleaning fees and processing fees. If you advertise it at the true price, you'll never get any business, so it incentivizes everybody to deceive. Not even the company wants to address this because they want to appear cheaper than hotels while simultaneously ruining the housing market but driving down the supply of housing. Story 22. Capitalism. It's a system catered for the owning class to make you work and pay you less than you're worth to pay themselves more than they're worth. Just check how much profit Walmart makes for the Walton family. Not a single Walmart worker should have to struggle to pay the bills. Story 23. Dental insurance companies often negotiate contracts with dental offices to establish two pricing structures, one for insured patients and one for those without insurance. For example, the cost to fill a cavity might be $400 for insured patients, with the patient covering a portion of the cost depending on their specific plan. However, for uninsured patients, the dentist might charge $700 for the same procedure, creating an incentive for patients to obtain dental insurance. Complete scam on top of a scam. Story 24. Food truck prices that is the same or more expensive than restaurants. When you go for a vacation in Hawaii, it is littered with food trucks. You want a drop of sweat from the cook to your food? How about a strand of hair because Jay wear no hairnets? Oh, you want that hand that touched the money also sprinkled cheese topping on your food? Delicious. Or how do they say it? Oh no. Story 25. That the money is going to the wealthy. They still largely think it's going on welfare for lazy people and on housing immigrants. Idiots. 2 billionaires in the 70s, world's population doubles since then, so there should be 4 billionaires, right? Max 10 perhaps. There are 3,000 of them. Story 26. I created images. Unfortunately, I've seen far too many people fall for these pictures that in my brain are very clearly edited and clearly AI, but it's sad to see how many people are losing the ability to tell the difference between a real photograph or a real man-made artwork and something produced off the computer. Story 27. I had nothing to say until I saw an advertisement at the top of the comments. Open door, till you can sell a home online, and it's way easier than you think. Why, thank you for the reminder, dipshits. I don't remember exact numbers, but I tried to work with these ding-dongs. I had a house sitting empty for several years. I just wanted to dump it and offered it to them for $305K. They offered $280K with somewhere between 20% to 28% in various fees to be paid to them. I did nothing to it and put it on the market for $350K a few months later. It sold within days with 4 solid offers to choose from. They were also pretentious assholes the entire time. I can't understand why anyone would fall for this shit. Story 28, sales. Products are stupidly overpriced, making them more coveted by consumers, and people are convinced they are getting a bargain with half off, not realizing companies are still making huge profits. Warranties are also bogus. Products are designed to fail right after the warranty ends after 5 years. Only useful in 1 out of 10,000 of the product cause it failed too early. Story 29. Donating to charities, nonprofit organizations. Many of them funnel their money to other orgs or individuals, and the supposed cause, the charity, forgets a tiny percentage of the money. Thinking of Haiti relief as an example. Story 30. Getting your windshield replaced and getting cash in hand. Windshield company files the biggest broken windshield claim they can against your insurance. Yeah, you're getting $200 and some steaks tonight, but your monthly insurance is about to go up by $70, $100 a month permanently. I know it's not legal in most states, but in mine, Arizona, it is. Story 31, cell phones. I buy $100 to $200 phones from Straight Talk. $45 a month plan is a bit much. Moto G Stylus/Stylus 5G, and now a Moto Power 5G. Motorola is slept on, but they make phones that the screen can be cracked 8 different ways and has perfect touch still. I work as a farmhand. Breaking phones is a when, not an if. Story 32, loans, especially mortgages. At current mortgage rates, that $500K house will probably end up costing about $1.5 million. When I discovered you were practically paying just interest the first couple of years, I was floored. It's become normalized. But this is a massive transfer of wealth from the working classes to the banks. Story 33. Subscription to play online on consoles. You buy the console, you buy the game, Code D for example, you buy the controller, or if it comes with the console, generally only one. You pay for internet, you buy whatever you want for it. Then you gotta buy the subscription. Yes, you do get free games with it, but why does online gaming still need to be a part of it? What if the games that's on it I don't care for? What about the ones I do that they've removed, but they gotta pay to keep the servers up? They also make a crap ton on controllers. They also get a cut from all of the other games. And getting your game on the console is not cheap. They are also worth billions. So why do people still have to pay to play online then? Story 34. Everyone thinks they're immune to marketing and can peer through the noise of advertising to get to the substance of any product or service, but they're not. People are very much susceptible to marketing, which is a billion-dollar industry that's constantly evolving and adapting to everything. Even the fact that people are desensitized to advertisements. I think one of the most common issues is that people confuse novelty with innovation. That's largely a byproduct of the fact that for most of the 20th century, brands centered their marketing and products around quality and reliability. That doesn't mean that every product was quality and reliable, but many were, and companies quickly realized that that's not a good business model for them, because it's one thing when you're expanding your market and trying to steal customers from your competitors. But once practically everyone has something, if it's well-made and reliable, they'll never have to buy another again. So going into the 21st century and today, companies have largely shifted to focusing on pushing people to constantly replace their things because the new ones are, allegedly, better in every way. This is rarely actually the case, but most consumers have trouble telling apart novelty from innovation. Novelty just means that something is new. Innovation means it's actually bringing something new to the table, making it worthwhile to upgrade to. Story 35. Practically all subscription services, where you don't receive a distinct commodity which upon delivery becomes your property and is fully usable after said subscription ends. A newspaper subscription is not a scam. You are paying for a commodity to be produced and delivered. You may cease the subscription at any time, and you may read your newspaper at any time. Subscription to digital services are different. You are paying for access to content. You do not own a copy of the content. You do not own a limited use right to the content, so you may not legally procure a copy in another way. The seller of the service may arbitrarily alter what content is available. And finally, once your subscription ends, you're forever locked out of viewing the content until you continue the subscription. Story 36. Vitamins and supplements. Billions per year spent without any proven benefits and typically without any testing for safety, quality, or even accuracy of dosage. Saw a recent article stating that 84% of people believe supplements to be safe and effective, while 30% plus have doubts over vaccines. How TF did we get here? Marketing and lots of yelling. Story 37. Foaming hand soap refills. It's just watered down hand soap so it can flow through the foam pump. You can dilute the regular stuff and save a lot of money. Edit to add. Movie theater popcorn. Largest food retail markup. I totally but it every time LOL. Story 38. The two-party political system in America is actually one unified party that both funds and is funded by wealthy corporations, international banks, and war profiteers. The politicians and the big money have each other's backs. We're all scammed into thinking our vote matters when, even if one party does more overtly bad things, it's because the other party set it up for them. Story 39. Pay-to-use services. Everything from renting, subscription services, in-app fees, cars, W/ads, and more are becoming a model where you'll never own anything to your name. You're essentially consumed at the idea of needing these things that even options to own are becoming non-existent. X. Physical media. Story 40. Subscriptions. Everything from movies, shows, to storage space, all solved with one-time payments of DVDs and flash drives. The amount of money sucking up someone's bank account when added up, $15 here and $12 there, gets into the hundreds each month. Story 41. Automobile industry. Pay for the car, pay gas every week, pay for insurance every month, pay for the yearly upkeep, pay taxes for the roads, pay taxes for the damage the car causes to the roads, just to be able to go to the grocery store. Story 42. So true. The problem is, if you ask for the cash price, it's still too high. The workforce should demand that more details and options are required to not only be offered for employment, but that actual cost be provided per household situations. Story 43. I can pay my rent with a check and there is no fee. I pay online with a bank account transfer, not a credit card, and still have to pay a fee. So why wouldn't I pay with a check? I get checks free with my bank, but who knows? President Elon Loller's. Story 44. Suburban development. All the infrastructure for it is entirely subsidized by urban city centers. Suburban development can't ever generate enough tax revenue to justify the cost of sprawling sewer systems, electric grid, roads, or their maintenance and repairs. And the houses themselves aren't sold at a price that makes up for that difference. Story 45. Most insurances. Anything VIP or exclusive. I don't know that scam is so good, but Google has pretty much been de-indexing the majority of the best informational sites on the web this whole decade and replacing them with crap at the top of the results, and nobody outside of the SEO world ever seems to mention it, costing us all tons of wasted time to finally find the best info if it is even possible. Whereas when Google actually cared about Googling, they got it right 90% plus of the time, and surely still could today if they so wanted. Story 46. American leftism. There's no organization that has a lower approval rating than the government. Government services are renowned for how terrible they are and their inefficiency and cost. Yet leftism convinces their adherents to support some of the most important products and services in our lives and for our country to be controlled by the government. Next theme. What did your therapist tell you that flipped the switch in your brain for the better? Story 1. That voice in your head isn't you. It's a voice you have heard, you have grown up with, you have learned. The best thing about learning is that it is never finished. You can learn a new voice. I'm still ages away from replacing the voice, but it has made many scenarios much easier to manage. Story 2. I needed to leave my husband. I raise goats. She said, do you ever just go out there and beat the crap out of one of your goats, hoping it will turn into a sheep? He's always going to be a goat. Story 3. Though I've been to therapy, this one is something I read online randomly. Just because things could have been different doesn't mean it would have been better. I basically took it as stop fretting about what you should have done differently or how people treated you. You could have done it completely differently, the way you wish you did, and something negative could have still happened. What happened happened. You can't live in the past. All you can do is move forward. Story 4. That you can decide that being 80 or 90% sure you're making the right decision can be enough. It's never usually going to be 100%, so aim for 80 or 90. Also, that I could potentially equally regret having another kid as much as not having one. I was so stuck in the fear of regretting not having more that I never considered the equal opposite could be true. Now happily one and done, and feeling very confident in that choice. Story 5. This might seem odd, but 3 weeks into working with her, at 30 years old, this therapist looks right at me and asks, do you see yourself as a person? My brain broke in that moment. I felt like my understanding of myself shattered in the exact moment that suddenly everything made so much sense. You see, my whole life, my family treated me as a prop, an accessory, a program. an extension of themselves, anything but a whole, actual human. So I never saw myself as one. Any courtesy, kindness, or grace I would extend to others, I didn't deserve it because I wasn't a person. Since then, I try to ask myself some very pointed questions when I'm mean to myself. If someone else in the exact same situation told you about it, would you tell them they're overreacting? If you saw someone else who looked exactly like you wear that, would you think the same mean things about them that you're saying to yourself? What would you say to someone else in the exact same situation? It's still a long road, and it didn't fix me, but it gave me a lot of perspective and started me on a healing journey I never knew I needed. Story 6. Feeling your feelings doesn't involve processing them with logic or tell yourself a story about why they're happening. It's listening to your body, realizing what muscles hurt, what feels tight, fluttery, nauseous, hot, cold, or whatever else. It's noticing the burning feeling in your eyes, the lump in your throat, or feeling so light you could float away. Story 7. I had a lot of fear of authority figures, and so I avoided talking to admin at my medical school about any issues I was having. We traced it back to an experience I had with gun violence from an authority figure. He said, "Well, Dr. Neal doesn't have a gun." It seems really silly, but that mantra really helped me. Whenever I talked to my dean, I would think to myself, Dr. Neal doesn't have a gun, and it would help me reassure myself that I was safe in that situation. I use that mantra for a lot of people now. Story 8. You need to protect your family at all costs, even if it means not talking to some of your other family members. I've been estranged from my narcissistic mom for 2 years now, and it's been amazing. Also important to know that just because you don't have kids, that doesn't mean your husband and dog isn't your little family. Realize who is in your family bubble and protect them at all costs. Story 9. I was lamenting my various issues, and in frustration stated that I hated my stupid brain. Without even hesitating, she just said, "Oh, your poor brain. It's doing its best." It was probably just something she was saying to try and talk me down from my theatrics, but it really made me aware of my negative internal monologue. Like, yeah, my brain is doing its best. It's just kind of bad at being a brain, but she's trying her best. Story 10. As someone who is highly anxious and always has to be doing something, I never give myself time to recharge the batteries. I just pause, plug in, and charge until I have 50% or slightly more and keep going. Then repeat. You know that's self-harm, right? My current issue is I haven't stopped this behavior. Acknowledging and understanding it is the first step, but I've really got to work on stopping the cycle. Story 11. That yes, I was surrounded by arseholes, and it wasn't that I was one. It was that simple. Suddenly it clicked that I didn't deserve what I got. Then there was the other one, when I said I sometimes wish my kids had a bigger family and maybe I should get in contact. She asked me a simple question. What makes you think they won't treat your kids the same way they treated you? You were a kid too when they did it to you. Solidified my no contact. Story 12. When I was thinking of staying with my now ex, is he acknowledging his role in the fight, or is he just forgiving you? I'd never thought to ask. Turns out he believed he was totally blameless and was just forgiving me. That question ended the relationship. Story 13. If I'm having really negative thoughts or dwelling on something bad, don't think about the pink gorilla. If you specifically tell yourself don't think about something, that's all you're going to think about, right? Well, if I tell myself not to think about something completely random silly, now I'm going to think about that instead. Also, it's okay to tell people you're overwhelmed and need a break. Story 14. When I start to clean, something comes over me, and I can't stop until I've deep cleaned the entire area. It was exhausting, and it made me not want to clean at all. Just make it better than you found it. All of the others saying, it doesn't have to be perfect. B work is just as good. No, it's not. B is seen as not living up to my potential, whereas better than you found it puts a positive spin on it. Story 15. I was telling my therapist about an incident when I was a child in first grade, and the kids at school bullied me. I tried to brush it off as a silly incident that didn't mean much. She told me, "You were a child when it happened. Just because as an adult it seems small now, doesn't mean it was small then. To the child you, it was something significant." Major light bulb moment, and had me realizing how many things from childhood I downplayed later as an adult. Story 16. I got diagnosed with autism at 32 years old. Best thing that ever happened to me. I sought therapy with that in mind and finally found somebody that was certified and experienced. He was awesome. Basically told me I wasn't a terrible person and really made me feel like maybe I do belong on this planet. I haven't considered suicide in a long time. Also helped me realize I was married to a narcissist and planted the seeds that would later help me leave. I will always be grateful. Story 17. Not my therapist, but my nurse practitioner. I am highly suspicious that you have ADHD, not BPD. Never once considered that would be my issue. Trial treatment. Immediately feeling better. Got a job very shortly after and moved out of my parents' house with my boyfriend. I'm 32. The amount years of psychiatric intakes, psychiatrists, therapists, multiple forms of therapy and different meds I was on that never made a difference. This one woman who was up to date on mental health for women clocked what was actually wrong and fixed it under 2 months. She was literally a lifesaver. Story 18. You don't have to earn your place in this world. You can simply exist for yourself and do what makes you happy. That rocked my shit. As a severely parentified kid with self-worth issues, I still struggle with not feeling worthy of many things if I'm not being useful. Story 19. Oh goody, mine is recent. Just last session I was describing certain thought and behavior patterns as insidious little ED stuff. I also told her about how my therapist from my teen years dealt with the situation poorly, and how my mom denied it entirely. Near the end of the hour, I started trying to backpedal a bit, that is, it's not so bad and I think I have a handle on it, etc., etc. She said, look, you started talking about this, so I do think it's big enough that you're reaching out for help. I could be just another person who doesn't respond to your cry for help. But I think you're heading into relapse territory, and I think I can help, and I think you can see the other side of this, so that's what is going to happen instead. Intake session with a nutritionist tomorrow. Wish me luck. Story 20. You were not raised by your parents. You had to grow up with them as first-time parents. Me, the eldest daughter of baby boomers' parents, having life crisis that I now had to be the parent to them, and my therapist drove home the fact I am viewed as their peer, not necessarily their child, and that's why they treat me the way they do now. It helps me in getting rid of a lot of my guilt if I fail to help them in any ways, because now I am relearning to be their kid instead of a person of the same rank as them. Story 21. I want you to write a letter to your dad forgiving him. He sexually abused me from ages 6, 11, and this was the final step in our process. After 2 weeks of trying to wrap my head around how to forgive him, spending so much time and energy thinking about it, I told her I couldn't do it and instead said I'll just say I forgive him to stop thinking about it. I couldn't stand forgiving him and him thinking that what he did was somehow okay. Then she said, that's exactly it. You're forgiving him for you, not for him. You're taking back your power and choosing to not spend your energy angry and upset with him. It was such a revelation to me to go through that mental exercise and release that hold he had over me. I never did write that letter, but I've moved on and am in such better mental health, even 3 years after that session. Story 22. Just last week, I was stressing out about the current events in the world, and he said something that made me feel much more optimistic. He said, of all my clients, you're the one I know would be able to survive an apocalypse. You have certain skills that would be very useful, and your childhood trauma has made you good at looking at all the options before making a decision. You've solutions-driven and you've survived hard things before. You can handle whatever life throws at you. I found it oddly comforting, and it has helped me keep my head on straight the remainder of the week. Story 23. If you have high blood pressure, you'd take blood pressure medication, right? So why do you draw the line at medicating chronic depression? Paraphrased. That was so damn eye-opening as a male that I was stunned. Started Buspar the next day, and after a few weeks realized life really isn't all that bad. Story 24. We'll uncover your trauma later. While I was in therapy for regular anxiety. 3 years later, long after I ended therapy, I realized she was right and I had really buried down trauma from past situations my brain blocked out. Uncovering that now with no therapy ATM sucks ass. She also supported the idea that I might have autism or ADHD. That led to me understanding myself better. Story 25. Someone I was responsible for committed suicide. I was also responsible for several other people at the time and afterwards. And I told my therapist how scared I was of another suicide under my charge. Me, oh man, IDK what I would do if another one hung themselves. Therapist, well, what would you do? Me, I'd be calling you immediately, ha ha, therapist. See, you do know what you do, so you don't need to wonder anymore. At the time, it was super helpful and stuck with me. We talked a lot about my what-ifs, and all said and done, I've saved myself a lot of anxiety by following that same thought process. What would I do if X happened? I'd probably Y, so I don't need to stress about it anymore. I've got a contingency plan. There's only so much within my control. Story 26. Me. How did I end up with PTSD? Everything seemed normal until it all came crashing down. It seems so ludicrous that my childhood caused something that's typically thought of as the affliction people who see the worst of humanity get. Therapist. Maybe you aren't aware yet that you have seen part of the worst of humanity as well. It's possible you haven't broken down the wall that would help you accept it. Boom! Glass shattered right there in that office, staring at the decorative rocks on the beige table between us. Story 27. She recommended the book Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. At least 95% of that book could have been plucked directly from my life. She also diagnosed me with CPTSD and helped me learn how to notice, manage flashbacks and triggers. Part of that diagnosis was seeing how it affects me in everyday life. Story 28, the most recent one. I told her how I had to text my best friend something that I knew would upset her. Then I blocked her immediately because I didn't feel like dealing with her angry reaction that she would inevitably have. And once I blocked her, I felt relieved, but I assumed it would just be temporary until I gave her time to cool down. I shared this with my therapist, and she said, "So, it sounds like you know how she's going to react to you, and she's done this before, and you just tolerate it?" Well, yeah. Then she just kind of stopped and let me think about it. It was then that I made the decision to break up with my best friend. Abusive relationships are not limited to romantic relationships. I never thought of a friendship being abusive. Another one was when I was sharing my recent struggle about my insecurities, and she said, "Every time you think a negative thought about yourself, think about who said it to you. Does their opinion matter?" This case was referring to some shit my ex said too about me. That was a good one too. Story 29. A bit grim, but when she cried and said she was proud of me after I said that I want to live. I was always high risk and had attempted to take my life in the time she'd known me. And seeing that she cared so much was really something. She wiped her tears and said, "I'm sorry, but I think it's important that we are comfortable with feeling." And that moment really changed me. I was so set on never feeling anything, and then I only felt misery for years. Then I learned I was uncomfortable with feeling, and that's where so much growth came from that I hadn't even considered happening. Story 30. Your mom wasn't a bad mom, so much as she just wasn't the mom you needed sometimes. This helped me see my mom's good intentions, heal many past resentments, and find radical acceptance for her. I never thought our relationship would be this strong, and I'm incredibly grateful as she's at the end of her life. Story 31. Make a buck off it. I used to get into fights with dog lovers who either let their dogs defecate or harass people, or else be unsavory narcissists using the dogs for attention. So the therapist challenged me to one. Not get into fights 2. Smoke tobacco if it helps me transition to calmer methods. 3. Make money off the one task they fail at. The job most dog lovers fail at is picking up their shit. So I made a small business doing that, picking up other people's dog shit. So far, I've made a ton of money, but cleaned up about 4.5 tons of crap from my community. A drop in the bucket, but still something that's a work of passion. It's not even hard work. Story 32. The single most important thing I internalized from couples therapy is to not try to manage other people's emotions. Leave that up to them. So, if you're going to a place you want to eat at, and your friend says they're fine with going there, don't agonize over whether they really want to go there. If they do, all is well. If they don't, then they should have told you that. But that's their problem, not yours. They lied to you and are experiencing the consequences of having done so. It's not your fault they did that, and it's unhealthy to constantly try to account for the possibility that your friends are lying to you. Trust that what they're telling you is true, and let them experience the consequences if it isn't. Operating under the assumption that my friends aren't lying to me and making it their responsibility to deal with it, if they do lie about their preferences, made dealing with things a whole lot easier. And if it turns out that someone you know does keep lying to you even after you explain all this, and then keeps insisting that it's your fault you didn't know and puts all of their unwillingness to just be honest on you, maybe you should consider whether they're actually someone you want to interact with. Story 33. My husband and I were struggling with a compulsion that he had. It made me so frustrated and angry. We went to therapy for it, but eventually the therapist pulled me in alone and said, "Look, because of the circumstances of your life, this is something that he will likely struggle with his whole life, and you cannot change him no matter how much you want to. So you have 2 choices. You can leave him, or you can stay and move forward knowing this is part of him, and find a way to come to terms with that." It flipped a massive switch in my head, and my anger about it just disappeared. I realized I had no power to change him. It made me let go of so much frustration. And as much as I wished I could change this about him, what we shared far outweighed any negatives. We just celebrated our 27th anniversary. Story 34. That if my friend is suffering and I do too much to help them, I'm robbing them of the chance to learn how to pick themselves up. Doing the work of finding a healthier balance is an ongoing struggle, but things are much better now. In the same vein, that even if I know exactly what the healthiest best thing would be for me to do in that situation, that doesn't mean my solution would work for them. They have a different life, a different brain, a different set of tools. Only offer advice if asked, and respect that you only know what would work for you. Story 35. It's really specific to a really horrible social situation I was in, but you did nothing wrong. Basically, I was in a toxic friendship group where abusive people would be welcomed in because everyone was a people pleaser. When I started calling a particular one out for increasingly concerning behavior, people didn't like it. Thought I was just being an asshole to their pal they barely knew. Snowballed to the point I'd talked about it to an outside friend who blabbed, and conversation got back and I felt like a backstabbing asshole. Almost all of them abandoned me. It collapsed the walls of how I approached almost every social situation in my life. PTSD response, everything. I was a shell of myself for a long time. I just wasn't strong enough at the time to walk away until I was forced out. Turns out the concerning person was, in fact, a predator. Who knew? Therapy is still ongoing, but breaking down all the reasons for so many of my friendships being a mess has been extremely useful. Mostly various flavors of trauma and neurodivergence. Therapy can change your life for the better. It really can. It did for me. Story 36. Had me look at my paternal great-grandmother who left Germany in the late 1800s. My grandmother who bought her boss's business and kept it going until she retired. My maternal grandmother lied and made herself younger, and my grandfather lied and made himself older. She was 8 years older. They had my mom, and he met Mom once before getting shot down. Her mom died of tuberculosis when Mom was 12. Mom lived with maternal grandparents who passed, and Mom was an orphan at 18. Mom was awesome, so I come from some amazing women. Story 37. She had me make a family tree and explain each person. If I said they had anger issues, they got a red box. That poor tree was full of red boxes. She said it stops WJ teeth me. I am really trying to break that, and I see one of my kids has the potential to carry anger too. We really need to keep working on this, and she suggested we keep to our sports. I am still in treatment, but I feel things are getting better. Story 38. Something to the effect of, you actually don't have to listen to or believe your thoughts. Your brain produces monologue, and some brains, like mine, more constantly and or harmfully than others, but that absolutely does not mean any of it is true or even relevant. I can't fully express how much of a revelation this was to me the first time I heard it, and how it's impacted my mental health and life overall since. Paradigm shift. Maybe other people realize this on their own, or maybe other people's thoughts are benign enough that it doesn't matter. I have no idea, but this is maybe the top one thing I've tried to drill by casual reputation into my own kids. Story 39. I was getting ready to go to court for a PFA, and she said, well, technically he's hindering your therapeutic progress because you can't process trauma if you're still going through it. Crazy for me to process that. As long as I had him in my life, he would be creating more and more trauma for me. It's honestly a really sad realization, but it's the truth. Story 40. Wasn't my therapist, but a friend. Once when we were out to dinner, I was being down on myself, and she said, in all earnestness, hey, that's my friend you're talking about. It really jolted me out of that mindset, and I still think about it often. How I used to talk and think about myself was so mean. I would never speak about other people that way. Why on earth was I so mean to myself? Story 41. She told me that the reason why I am attracted to girls with emotional issues and difficulties is that, since I was working during my entire childhood, hard work became my trauma. That I would date girls who requires a lot of effort and hard work because it makes me feel useful. She told me that I will feel just as happy dating someone who has a lot of activities that likes to drag me along like sports and hobbies. Story 42. That I would never not have my trauma, but it wouldn't weigh me down. It would be like a pebble in my backpack that I occasionally noticed, pulled out, looked out, then put back and keep walking. Also that my decisions today are the decisions I make for little me, who never had a say. I get such a gratitude hit from simple things every time I remember that little me would be shocked. Story 43. Give yourself grace. Be kind to yourself. Are things I've been saying and will continue saying for the rest of my life. She's the only therapist out of 4 that has ever made me feel safe, secure, understood, and validated. Every time I felt like I failed and told her about it, she constantly told me these things while also validating me that it was okay to mess up sometimes since it was all new to me. And I was still learning. It's been 2 years now that I've been going to her, and I can proudly say that I can set boundaries and not people please anymore. I've lost friends and even family due to it, but I don't deserve to be disrespected anymore. Sometimes I cry when I think about what an angry and lost soul I was before I met my therapist. I truly appreciate her beyond words. Taylor, I love you, girl. Story 44. She told me that the only thing we are certain about is that life is uncertain, that my fears were preventing me from experiencing great things, even if temporarily, because I was holding on to the pain of it ending. She then told me that it would hurt regardless. It would hurt if it ended, and it would hurt me if I never tried. Which pain was I willing to endure? I went for it. I did it scared, and it was the best decision for myself and my family. Do I know for sure it won't end or that it won't be painful if it does? Absolutely not. but what I'm creating now makes it all worth it. Story 45. Your suffering is never caused by the person you're blaming. Blame is an easy escape, but it never leads to freedom and encases you in a prison of false perception. It's tempting to believe that suffering is caused by someone else, that their words, their actions, or their choices are the reason for the pain. But what if the real source of suffering isn't what they did, but the way it is perceived, processed, and held on to? The mind has a way of creating narratives. It builds stories around pain, assigning fault and attaching emotions to past wounds. But the moment blame is given away, power is also given away. Blame keeps the focus outward, waiting for someone else to change, apologize, or make things right. But what if peace doesn't depend on their actions? What if it has always been an internal choice? No one can control how others act. People will make mistakes, they will be unfair, they will disappoint, but what happens next, the response, the emotions carried forward, the way the situation is interpreted, is entirely within personal control. And this is where true strength lies. In realizing that suffering isn't created by the external, but by the attachment to what cannot be changed. Personal accountability is not about excusing others. It's about reclaiming power. It's the understanding that while pain is real, suffering is optional. It's the choice to see difficult situations as lessons instead of burdens, to shift perspective from victimhood to growth. The world will not always be kind, but inner peace is not determined by external forces. Letting go of blame is not about denying hurt. It's about refusing to let it define the future. When responsibility is taken for thoughts, reactions, and emotions, life no longer feels like something that happens to you, but something shaped by you. Freedom begins the moment responsibility is claimed. The choice is always there, to remain bound by blame or to step forward in strength. In the end, the only true control is over oneself, and that is where real peace is found.